It's January 10th, 2023. The time is 10:01 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks, Matari, and Duncan. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. We have 3 discussion items, and our first item is advisory board appointments. We have some openings for airport, waterways, snowmobile, and actually historic preservation. Planning and zoning now has one, and what else? That's it. Okay. So the discussion is, Bruce being new, how would you like to move forward with these advisory board appointments? There's several ways we can do it. Typically, we ask the chair on those advisory board appointments along with the director of the department to give us some suggestions based on the number of applicants that have come in. So when Bill, Chris, and I first started, we actually asked several of the advisory boards, if not all of them, for everybody to reapply. So that is also an option. And and I think a couple of these were just checking. We may not have recommendations yet from a couple of the different things, but Jonathan can circulate all the openings, and then all the applicants are in the G Drive, which he can also give you a link to. So, thoughts?
Well, I like the idea first of just kind of evaluating each of the advisory boards and their current membership, as well as looking at all the candidates to fill the existing open positions. And then as time goes by, we can determine whether or not we need an advisory board to, reapply for the members.
Okay. All right. So if you are good with just working with Jonathan then and finding out the openings and what the status of all of them are.
Yes, I am.
Okay. That's great. Bill, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, that sounds fine to me.
Okay. So we will just wait to hear from Bruce. Okay, so I guess the only other thing is the airport advisory board is supposed to meet tomorrow to pick chair and vice chair. So I don't know if you've got thoughts on that since you are the liaison.
Well, it sounds like just with the fact that everything's happening so quickly that if they have to pick a chair and a vice chair, they may end up having to have to do that again when they fill out the rest of the spots. So that's probably just a consequence of procedure.
Okay. So you're fine with them just keeping the meeting and keeping their agenda?
If they have an agenda that they want to cover, then yeah, they should have the meeting.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Anything further on advisory board appointments? Okay. Hearing nothing. Item 2, how to handle unbudgeted items and over budget line items. And I've asked Brandy to join us. And I guess she's handing out policy 930, which I'm sorry that I did not get this to you ahead of time so you could review it. But once again, there's no decisions being made today. It's just a discussion. The way I've Brandy, I'll let you start and then I can chime in.
Okay. Brandy Falcon for the record. I did kind of want to just briefly explain this policy for the benefit of Commissioner Matari since he's new. And it's always a good refresher to everyone how this policy works. So and I do want to point out this is heavily driven by Idaho code. So when people get frustrated, that's my answer is this is the law essentially, and that's what we're trying to enforce. So our budgeted expenditures are divided into 3 categories, A, B, and C. A budget is personnel, B budget is operating, and C budget is capital. The policy is that budgeted funds for A budget can only be spent on A budget, budgeted funds for B budget only on B, same for C. You can't use extra money in each classification to cover expenditures in another classification. Additionally, if you overspend total of one of those classifications, you have to we'll stop paying your bills until you get board approval. So anything that is outside of this policy, the auditor's office requires board approval to move forward, because it's our job to make sure that the county adheres to the adopted budget. So when there is a department head, an elected, anyone countywide who goes outside of this policy, we do require, it's our job to at least make you aware, and then you can decide how to move forward. So I don't know if you wanted to discuss how to handle over budgeted expenditures.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, I always will make the staff member or elected, I will request that they notify the board just via an email or a memo. And that way I've done my job, I've made you aware, so then when you are aware that they're going over budget, you have a decision to either be okay with it via email, or if you want to bring it to a business meeting to handle at a business meeting, you have the option to do so. But I've done my job to make sure that you're notified if someone is going outside of policy.
And this is not an overall A, B, or C. This is an actual line item?
No, if someone
Okay.
is going over, because our policy is not for individual line item, our
Correct.
policy is that if they go over in any individual classification, or if any individual classification, or like if they spend more than 10,000, they have to get your permission. So anything that's outside of policy, I make them notify you. So some people will intentionally go over budget, and some people unintentionally. Either way, I make them come to you because that's our job.
Sure. So I will give an example. There is a department that in their one line item, they had, they were going to purchase A, they were going to purchase B, they were going to purchase C. Well, as it turned out, at the very end of last year, they had money left over, so they had already purchased A. So then they found out that they needed D.
And you're not referring to budget classifications,
Nope,
are you?
nope,
You're just talking
nope.
about
I'm just talking
purchases.
items,
Okay.
just widgets. Widgets A, widgets B, widget C.
Okay.
So then they found out that they needed this widget D. Well, because they had already bought widget A, they didn't, it was fine. So they went ahead and bought widget D, but it didn't affect their line item, but it was an unbudgeted item. So for me, I like my department heads to just reach out and just say, hey, we did this, just so I'm aware of it in case anybody else, has a question on it.
Right.
And I'm talking like, thousands of dollars, not, they spent $15 more in stamps than was in the budget. So that's one way to handle it. So I guess the discussion I wanted to have with this board was, do you want to just keep it between liaison and department head? And then if one of us feels like, no, this needs to go before the board, then we can bring it before the board. There's that $10,000 mark, so to me, that's still a really good sideboard, I guess. So if widget D is over 10,000, then, they're going to bring it for us, no matter if they budget it or not.
For the entire board.
Yeah, entire board.
Chairman Leslie,
Yeah.
can I clarify, just in the policy 930 regarding B budget, I guess I want to give a good example on that.
Yes.
So it's based on, let's say the org set of the clerk's division. We have county assistants and we have auditor, both B budget. So if I wanted to purchase something within the B budget that was obviously budgeted in the auditor's division, that would be okay, but I can't take funds from the county assistants org set and then ask it to be used for auditor items. This is what that's regarding this policy. It's not coming down to the line item. It's regarding org sets.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
and the A, B, and C classifications. within
Yes,
each
okay, so each department has its own org set. Some departments have multiple org sets. And so this policy says you cannot transfer in between multiple org sets.
And each
And
of
an
those,
easy way to, org set can also be thought of as budget. So each department is going to have multiple budgets, just accounting wise, that's how it works. And we enforce this to each individual budget. I'm not going to let, we don't look at the sheriff, for example, they're the majority of our budget. We don't say, the jail can go over because patrol is under. We don't, we're not gonna like mix everybody's budgets together.
Yeah, they just have to come before us if they have that situation. And departments often do have that situation.
Right. And I'm fine amending the budget as long as the board is approving it. That's my point.
And just for clarification, an org set is similar to like a silo within a department within the organization.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
But the biggest
So-
thing is focusing, and this is the way the policy is laid out, it's not line item, it's based on the overall B budget of that budget or org set going forward, and not being
Sure.
able to transfer it, like she gave an example from jail to patrol, that has to go before the board. if
And
there's more
even
money
within patrol divisions, they have different funds, like K-9 fund can't be used to put tires on the car. There's those kinds of things.
That makes sense.
I just don't want our department heads to have to come with the example that I gave. Okay, they had already bought the one widget last year, and then this year they figured out that they need this other widget. And so I'm happy with being the liaison and saying, okay, I understand that you needed that, that's appropriate, right? They're not buying a nacho machine. They're buying something that they need to do their job. So I'm okay with that, but we can also have them come before the board. We can have them email all three of us on the board as well, just so each of us is in the loop. So there's we don't need to make a decision today, but I wanted to put it up front because this happens a lot, and I just want to make sure that we are recognizing how, as a board, we want to handle these kinds of things.
And how often does this happen?
Very often.
Yeah, and does it happen because there's just unexpected things that it's hard to forecast in the budget, or does it happen because there's a management issue to a degree?
It's a couple things. If a department goes over in total on a budget, that's pretty much for the majority out of their control. And that one, payroll has to go through. So a budget, unless it's something more discretionary like overtime, the board we don't really bring that to the board because a budget's a little unique that way. B budget, if a department goes over in total in their B budget, that's usually because they have spent their money on things other than what they planned to, what they said they would, or if they did a poor job forecasting. And when that happens, I do make the department come to the board and ask for fund balance in order to fund their operations the rest of the year. C budget, when a department goes over in C budget, either that's because there is unexpected outfitting costs is very common. Someone will get approval to buy a vehicle or a snowmobile or a Polaris Ranger, any type of vehicle, and there are additional outfitting costs associated with that either they didn't know about or they didn't bring to the attention of the board at the time they got approval. So then they spend $10,000 or $50,000 on a vehicle, and they go spend another $2,000 or $3,000 outfitting this vehicle. And I have to be the annoying one and say, please get board approval before we pay these invoices. And then there are some people who just don't care and do whatever they want.
And can you define like a capital expense? Because I've heard a few different ways where, it's a long-term asset that goes past 5 years. Some people, like a computer is really it's depreciated immediately when you buy it, so.
Right. In general, capital fixed assets are going to be anything over $10,000. There are certain purchases over $10,000 that we won't capitalize. For example, a batch of radios. In total, they might be $200,000, but each individual one is not above the $10,000 threshold. Or if something is very expensive, but it is not going to have a useful life of more than a year, we won't capitalize it. There are certain, like the assessor is budgeted to spend about $260,000 on a software consulting engagement. That is an operational expense, not capital, because it's an ongoing contractual consultant. It's not physical assets or actual systems that we're acquiring.
Okay, and it's clearly defined so everyone understands
We do
that.
have a policy regarding it that I'm happy to send you if you'd like.
I'll take a look at it.
Yeah.
But all the other department heads, though, they understand that
Yep, they're
clearly.
all pretty good. Okay. Pretty much everyone is very good with that.
And actually, on the business meeting today, we're going to see a couple of those transfers. request to transfer between.
I guess
Yeah,
we
so-
talk like A, B, and C, but A is the personnel budget, B is operating, and C is capital. So,
And most of the issues are in the B budget.
yes.
Yes, because it's the most discretionary usually is what,
Yeah.
you know.
Yes, and I will, from my point of view, I only send people to the board when they are exceeding their total B or C budget.
Right.
I don't track if they're spending in an individual line item in each budget. I don't go in and check if they were, that's what that money is for.
Right.
We-
So where we've gotten in trouble in the past is like you have that A widget, B widget, C widget. Okay, now I want D widget, but I still have to buy A, B, and C widgets. So they'll come and they'll get approval for widget D, and then they'll still want to buy everything else. So it's, it's kind of how much you want to know and understand.
So we haven't defined clearly that if you're going to get D widget, you're giving up C or B widget.
Correct. So this is why this conversation today.
Or sometimes, like you said, something unanticipated comes up, you weren't planning for, you've already spent A, B, and C widget, but now you need D. And so the question is, does it go over the line item, or are they still staying within, not line item, overall B budget? Are they staying within budget or they're not? And then whether they're going before the board or not. I do know, we had an instance, if you do have something even in a line item, the approval person has to approve that override even for that line item. It's not necessarily going before you guys, but that second approval level, whether it's a supervisor or manager saying yes, they're essentially approving what was over that line item. Although the
Right.
B budget overall has not been gone over.
And once again, my ideal is to not frustrate or put more bureaucracy on any of our department heads. So this is why I want to try to figure out the least amount of red tape that we can do for these people, but yet maintain accountability.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a kind of situation where it really relies upon, a lot of good faith. That people are operating in good faith, because I could see where it's a real challenge, because if you can get widget D early in the budget year, then late in the year you're dealing with B and C widgets that haven't been purchased yet.
Yep, exactly.
Right, and it's a little bit more difficult to if you overrun your entire B budget, something's pretty wrong, and
Yeah.
that's something that jumps out. The C budget, I feel we give people a really decent amount of leeway, and if they overspend, it's very easy for them to send an email to 3 commissioners. It takes 5 minutes of their time, and that's all I'm asking, because then I've done my job to make sure that the board is aware. And then it's on you. If you're fine with it, good. And if you want to bring it to a meeting, you can.
And there is flexibility, however, if the board wants to, it can take something from the C budget and apply it to the B budget if it wants to.
Yeah, and like today, I think we're taking B budget and applying it to C budget.
Today, Stu Miller is asking, because they had an unanticipated damage to one of the showers in the jail. He's asking to use money from his C budget and move it into his B budget, because that would be a repair. And so that's an example of that type of situation.
Yeah, and this is fluid, so we don't have to make any decisions, and we can make a decision and go back and say, we don't like this decision.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring it up because it's something that I deal with every single week. And so I just want to kind of get people to start thinking about how we want to handle it. So
Okay, so I'm not hearing you want us to change our procedures at all. Okay.
not for me now.
No, I think just getting a handle on it. I understand the challenge now because, again, if you have someone operating in good faith, these things are pretty easy to manage too. And you almost want to let people make autonomous decisions. But when you do that as a policy, then you set yourself up for those who,
Yep.
may not be operating under that same,
Right.
standard. And so that creates the issues.
Right, and if I am strict on certain people, because I know they do it intentionally, I have to equally uphold the policy for everyone else, even though they may unintentionally go over budget.
Okay.
Yeah. So just stuff to noodle on and think about, and we can bring that up at another time. So Bill, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I like the way it's working right now, and what I was thinking was Brandy, when she talked about letting someone know that they're over and they should contact the board, I think that should not be necessarily her responsibility to see that they contact the board, but they should be told to contact the board, no ifs, ands, or buts. And we can decide if it's worthy of additional discussion or action.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine if we get one of these emails, then one of us can chime in if they want to see it come to a public meeting or if they're okay with it. But obviously, those are still within policy changes, not outside of policy, which would be the $10,000 purchase and things like that. So,
Absolutely.
I just want to give an example for you, Bruce. When something is budgeted, like for $10,000, our ballot printing sometimes will be $13,000. We still have to bring that before the board before we can pay the invoice, even though we had budgeted for fiscal year '23. So things like that will be coming before you guys, even though we had budgeted it.
yeah, if they could have signed a contract, so anything contract doesn't come before us because we've already read the contract and signed it.
Understood.
Yeah, so. Okay, any other thoughts on this matter? Bill, are you good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. All right, item 3, next steps for Justice Center expansion, which we will go over a little bit today as well, because it's on our status update form for the, which reminds me, I'll address that too, for the business meeting today. So the business meeting, we always have 2 subjects that we talk about every week, and that's the Justice Center expansion and impact fees. And so that's kind of our ongoing, like, where are we at with it? And it's kind of important to do on a weekly basis. But what I wanted to talk about today was the fact that the ARPA money's been allocated, the construction company has been hired, and now what they're doing is scheduling a pre-kickoff meeting, and then we'll hear from Boughton Construction, and then what they're going to do is start working with the architects to get the architects' projection of cost down. And the way it worked with the jail, we had construction manager, general contractor, which is the same process we're handling for the Justice Center expansion, and they were able to get down costs so much that we actually saved $1 million off of what was budgeted for the jail expansion. So this is what I'm looking forward to with this project as well. And
that occurs when?
we're waiting to schedule. So
Okay.
hopefully this month, we're looking to meet with Boughton and LCA, our architects, and meet with them this month. So, Bill, did you have comments on this?
No.
Okay. Bill, you were, at one point, had said that you were in favor of the expansion as long as it stuck to $20 million. Is that still your thoughts?
I think what I said was 18, but say 20 or less. Yes.
Okay.
I don't like the way the ARPA money was allocated because we made quite a show of inviting everybody to apply, knowing full well that pretty much all the money has already been spent. I don't think that's. I think that's very disingenuous.
Okay. Noted. Anything else on this, Bruce? Questions?
No, I guess we'll find out more when we have that kickoff meeting.
Yep. And they've already identified some right off the top about where some money can be saved there. So there's
And-
different options.
Just out of curiosity, this money that gets saved, is there like a plan B for this money?
Contingency for the other projects that have been approved.
And what if we end up with a surplus, just out of curiosity?
Then we can go back to, I don't know, Jennifer, do you have a better?
Yes, with the ARPA money, unless things have changed, and I know there's this discussion, is that we have to set and plan by 2024 how we're going to use the money, and then we're supposed to utilize the money by 2026. So that's where we're at right now. I don't know if things are going to change. I heard talks when we went down to that IAC conference of the governor mentioning maybe some expansion of that time. But right now, everything has to be set in stone for what the projects we're going to be doing in 2024, and then money spent by and completed projects by 2026.
Yeah.
Well, just real quick. So let's say you complete the projects and you have this money, you know, that you saved a couple $1 million somehow. Does that money get forfeited, or do you have the option to use it for something different?
Okay, well, it depends. So there is a $10 million chunk that can be used for anything. So if that money saved falls in that $10 million, it can just go to our fund balance for revenue replacement. But if it turns out that that $10 million was allocated to some projects that weren't not specific in the guidelines, which is allowed, then we would have to reapply that money to ARPA projects, like ARPA.
Okay.
And there were, in which I'll give you, we have the whole ARPA book, so I'm not sure if you've seen that yet, but it outlines all of the requests that we got and the ranking system. So there are some projects underneath
Okay,
that
I
potentially
understand.
could fund
Okay.
with that money.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll keep you updated if we get any kind of expansion on that time regarding that. We haven't heard since
Okay.
if that's going to be extended, those 2024 dates and then the 2026 dates.
Sure. Okay. Bill, do you still have your ARPA book?
I don't think I do.
Okay, but you probably have it electronically then, so you could look at the other, in the ranking, the ones that didn't quite make it because the funds were out. Did you want to look at
Okay,
that?
yes, sure.
Okay, yeah, just look at that, because if there is leftover money, maybe that's a discussion we can have. So, of course, we won't know until we get into this, but there's that.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments, questions on next steps for Justice Center expansion?
Nope.
Okay. Public comment? Frank, nothing? Okay. All right, nothing online, Jonathan? All right, 10:28, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Bill. See you.